I was standing in front of Arthur's grave when I heard it, the sound of a child laughing. Then I saw him, that face, that smile, even the same bear I'd given my boy all those years ago. And then her, the woman with him, the moment our eyes met, her face drained of color. She clutched the boy protectively, like I was some kind of threat. But who was she running from? Why did she look so scared? And why did that little boy call my son Papa? I thought I was there to mourn. Instead, I walked into a mystery I never saw coming. For years to the day since Arthur's funeral, and the pain was as sharp as ever, the old cemetery gates creaked shut behind me as I gave a nod to the groundskeeper. He recognized me by now, every Thursday at 10, rain or shine. The Vance plot stretched along the east side, where generations of my family lay beneath identical gray headstones. My heels tapped along the gravel path as clouds rolled in. Rain was in the forecast, so I planned to make it quick. I passed my husband's grave, then my parents', barely glancing as I moved toward the newest stone. The one that still didn't feel real, Arthur's. The air smelled of damp grass and freshly turned soil. Spring was coming, but you wouldn't know it from the chill in the breeze. My mind wandered to the stack of reports on my desk, the meeting with the acquisition board set for tomorrow. Work helped. It always had. I slowed as I neared Arthur's headstone and stopped short. Someone had beaten me there. A small bouquet leaned against the marker. Wildflowers, nothing fancy, just daisies and black-eyed Susans. I frowned. Julian only came by on holidays, and Arthur's college friends hadn't visited in years. Before I could step closer, I heard it. Laughter, a child's, high and carefree. I instinctively moved behind an oak tree, suddenly feeling like an intruder on my own son's grave. There she was. A young woman on a blanket, no older than 30, dark ponytail, patched jeans, a simple blue jacket. Next to her, a small boy knelt in the grass, animatedly talking to the headstone. And then Mr. Bear got a shot, but he didn't cry. The boy said proudly, holding up a teddy bear so worn its fur was nearly gone. My heart seized. That bear, Benson, I knew it. I'd given it to Arthur on his 5th birthday. He'd slept with it until he was 12, and it followed him to college, perched on his bookshelf like a silent companion. But it wasn't the bear that brought tears to my eyes. It was the boy, those deep blue eyes, slightly tilted. That lopsided grin, the dimple in his chin, Arthur's face, his features, his smile. I clung to the tree, the world tilting. Tell Papa what else the doctor said, the woman said gently. Papa. She called Arthur Papa. My heart began racing. The boy looked about 4. Arthur had been gone for years. The math checked out. But he never told me about anyone, never brought a woman home, never mentioned a child. Had he known? Did my son die never knowing he had a son? The little boy was making the bear dance across the stone. This wasn't their first visit. Leo, she said softly, be careful with Benson. He's very old and very special. Leo. His name was Leo. I stared for another minute, trying to catch my breath. The woman brushed the boy's hair back, the same way Arthur always used to. I stepped out from behind the tree. She noticed me instantly. Her eyes widened. Recognition, fear. She knew who I was. Hi, Leo said brightly, oblivious. This is my papa. He patted the headstone. The woman's arm reached out, pulling him close. Who are you? I asked, my voice calm despite the storm in my chest. She swallowed, glanced toward the gates, calculating distance. That boy, I said, I's never leaving him. He has my son's eyes. Leo looked up at me, still smiling, clutching the bear tighter. I'm sorry, the woman whispered. We should go. She started to gather their things, the juice box, the apple slices, the folded blanket. That's Benson, I said, pointing to the bear. Arthur's bear. I gave it to him when he turned 5. Leo looked at the bear, then at me, eyes wide. You knew Benson when he was new? I did, I said, taking a cautious step forward. And I knew your papa. The woman stood, backpack slung over her shoulder. Please, I said, don't go. What's your name? Elena, she said, after a pause. Elena Garcia. She instantly looked like she regretted saying it. And you knew my son? She didn't answer. Just nodded, holding Leo's shoulder. Then we need to talk. I can't, she said, her voice cracking. I'm sorry, Mrs. Vance. We have to go. Are you his mother? I asked, though I already knew. Yes. Her tone was firm, now fierce. And Arthur, yes. Why didn't you come sooner? Why did I never get to see his first steps, his first words? Because I was scared, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I should never have come today. But Leo keeps asking about his father, and I thought he deserved some kind of connection. I reached into my purse, pulled out a card. Please, I said, call me. If you ever need anything. We don't need anything. She was backing away now, guiding Leo with her. But I didn't finish telling Papa about the doctor. Leo said, confused. Next time, baby, she said gently. Then she looked up at me. I'm sorry. And they left. Leo waved Benson's paw. Bye, lady, he called out. And just like that, they were gone. I stood there, alone with the wildflowers and the silence. My son's son, a teddy bear I'd bought nearly 30 years ago, Thomas, my driver, appeared beside me. Everything all right, Mrs. Vance? I didn't answer right away. I looked down at the flowers she'd left and at the white roses still in my hand. Yes, Thomas, I said quietly. Take me back to the office. But as I walked away, I paused. I laid my roses gently next to the wild bouquet. Ran my fingers over Arthur's name etched in stone. You had a son, I whispered. He has your eyes ... and your bear. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell me? But the grave said nothing. And for the first time in 4 years, I didn't just feel grief. I felt something sharper. Something with direction, with purpose. I stood up and brushed the grass from my knees. I'll find out the truth, I murmured. I'll protect your boy. The rain began to fall, but I hardly noticed. I had work to do ... I don't even remember the drive back. My mind kept replaying the image of that little boy with Arthur's eyes, Arthur's grin, holding the same bear I'd wrapped in ribbon nearly 3 decades ago. My grandson. The word didn't feel real in my mouth. Thomas opened the car door when we pulled into the drive. His expression was as neutral as always. He'd been with me long enough to know when not to speak. Will you be needing anything else, Mrs. Vance? No, thank you, I said. I'll be in my study. The house was quiet, the way it had been for the past 4 years. Too quiet. I headed straight to the one room that still felt like mine. Mahogany-paneled walls, tall windows casting afternoon light over the furniture. Arthur's Harvard diploma still hanging over the fireplace. I never had the heart to take it down. I hung up my coat, poured a measure of scotch into a crystal tumbler, and sat at the desk that had carried me through boardroom victories, bedtime math problems, and Arthur's eulogy. My hand moved instinctively to the silver picture frame in the corner. Arthur, laughing on his 30th birthday, the last one. I didn't let myself hesitate. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Delaney, the voice answered. Frank, it's Amelia Vance. Mrs. Vance. His tone shifted instantly. What can I do for you? I need your help, I said. It's personal, and it has to stay confidential. Of course. There's a woman, Elena Garcia. She has a 4-year-old son named Leo. Even saying it aloud felt unreal. I believe the boy is Arthur's. Silence. Frank understood the gravity. I need you to confirm everything. Where they live, where she works, her history. And whether they're safe. Do you think they're in danger? I'm not sure, but she was scared when she saw me. Not ashamed, scared. What exactly are you looking for? Everything, I said quietly, but be discreet. If that boy is my grandson, I don't want to scare them away. I understand. I'll begin immediately. The door to my study opened. Julian walked in. I hadn't even heard him come home. I need to go, I told Frank. Call me as soon as you find anything. I hung up and composed myself. Julian looked like he'd just come from a board meeting. Tailored navy suit, every hair in place. Since Arthur's death, he'd taken on more and more at the company, filling the space his brother left behind. He'd grown into it. Mother, he said, kissing my cheek. I wanted to check on you. I know today must have been difficult. I nodded. The anniversary is never easy. He sat in the chair across from me, casually unbuttoning his jacket. How was the cemetery? I hesitated. We'd grown closer these last years, Julian and I. But this felt fragile, too soon to share. Still, I wanted to see his reaction. I met someone there, I said carefully. A young woman and her son. They were visiting Arthur's grave. Julian raised an eyebrow at the family plot. That's unusual. The boy's about 4, I said. He looks just like Arthur. Julian went still. What do you mean? I mean he has Arthur's face, his smile, his eyes. And he was holding Benson. Julian blinked. Benson, that old bear. Yes. The woman, Elena, confirmed it. She said the boy is Arthur's. He leaned forward, concern etched into his expression. Mother, that seems awfully convenient, doesn't it? A woman and child showing up out of the blue 4 years later. They didn't show up. They were already there. Still, he said, his voice softening. A woman claiming her son belongs to a wealthy dead man. It's a classic setup. I bristled. She didn't ask for anything. She tried to leave the moment she saw me. Julian gave me a sympathetic smile, the kind people use when they think you're being naive. That's part of the game. Make you chase them. Make you feel like you're the one seeking connection. I pulled my hand away. I've already asked Frank Delaney to look into her. A flicker crossed Julian's face, something I couldn't read. Concern, annoyance, gone before I could name it. That's a good move, he said smoothly, but please let me handle this, Mother. You've been through enough. I don't want to see you hurt. I appreciate that, I replied evenly. But I want to see Frank's report first. Julian stood, buttoning his jacket again. Just promise me you won't reach out to her until we know more. She could be manipulating you. I said I'll wait, I told him. After he left, I sat there in the quiet, trying to pinpoint what felt off. Something in his tone, his insistence, like a piano tune just a half step too flat. Something wasn't right. A week passed. I went through the motions, meetings, phone calls, quarterly numbers, but my thoughts kept drifting to Leo. Did he like bugs like Arthur did? Did thunderstorms scare him? What did he know about his father, beyond a grave and some stories? Thursday morning, Frank called. I have a preliminary report. Can I come by this afternoon? He arrived at 2, a manila folder tucked under his arm. I closed the door behind him. What did you find? Elena Garcia, 29, single mother, lives in Parkside. Not the best part of town, but not the worst either. She works 2 jobs, junior draftsman at Manning Architectural by day, waitress at Rosario's on weekends. She's an architect, not licensed yet. She was in graduate school, dropped out around the time Arthur died. Student loan debt, medical bills and collections from the year the boy was born. No criminal record. Her current landlord says she's quiet, respectful, always pays, even if it's late sometimes. And the boy, Leo's in daycare at Little Sprouts while she works. Frank paused. There's some red flags. She was evicted 4 years ago. Had a lapse in employment. Medical bills piled up. She was pregnant and alone, I said quietly. Frank nodded. He handed me photos, shots, of the boy playing in a local park. One stopped my breath cold. Leo coming down a slide, grinning, the cowlick in his hair. The dimple when he smiled. It was Arthur. I whispered, "That's him." The study door opened. Julian stepped in. Too perfectly timed. I thought I heard voices. He said, "Eyeing Frank." Then the photos. Frank looked to me. I nodded. "I was just leaving," he said. "I'll continue following up on the details we discussed." Mrs. Vance. After he left, Julian took the same seat across from me. So, what did he find? I gave him the basics, watching his reactions carefully. 2 jobs, student loans, eviction, bills and collection. Julian counted them off like checkboxes. Financial desperation. She's fishing. She's raising a child on her own, I said. Or playing a role. He replied smoothly, "If she's struggling that much, why not come to us sooner?" It was a fair question, one I'd been asking myself. "I think we should offer her a settlement," Julian continued. "A lump sum, enough to help with the child, but with a legal agreement that she keeps her distance. Trust me, bringing them into our lives will only end badly." He stood to leave, his tone final. "I'll look into her myself. There's always more under the surface." He walked out without waiting for a reply. I looked back down at the photos. Leo, laughing, eyes scrunched. Just like Arthur when he was 6, squealing as his dad chased him around the pool. Julian's warnings echoed in my head. She's desperate. It's a scam. Protect yourself. But if this was all about money, why did she run? Why stay away for 4 years? And that look in her eyes, that wasn't a con, that was fear. No, Julian wasn't going to make this decision for me. Not this time. I tucked Leo's photo into my desk drawer, separate from the report. Then I reached for the phone. It was time I saw the truth for myself. I had Thomas drop me off a block away. The building matched Frank's description exactly. Cold brick, worn at the edges, with rusted AC units hanging out of crooked windows. The security door hung askew, locked in name only. Inside, the hallway smelled of bleach, overcooked rice, and the faint hint of mildew. Carpet so thin you could see the concrete beneath. Apartment 412. I knocked twice. I could hear footsteps inside, then silence. She was checking the peephole. The door cracked open. Elena. Her eyes went wide. Mrs. Vance. Her voice was barely more than a breath. I didn't let her ask how I found her. I need to speak with you, I said. May I come in? She looked down the hallway, hesitating. Leo's napping. I'll be quiet. She nodded once and opened the door just enough for me to slip inside. The apartment was small but spotless. Second-hand furniture, patched cushions, plastic flowers in a cracked vase on the table. Milk crate shelves lined the walls, filled with children's books, sketch pads, and a few architectural design volumes. Drawings in crayon were taped to the fridge, suns, dinosaurs, crooked houses labeled home. It's not much, she said, folding her arms across her chest. It's a home, I replied. Her shoulders dropped just a little. A stack of envelopes sat on the counter, one with red ink screaming final notice. Mama. The voice was soft and groggy. Leo stood in the hallway, rubbing his eyes. Benson dangled from his arm. He saw me and his whole face lit up. It's the lady from Papa's Stone. Hello, Leo, I said, my voice unexpectedly thick. Are you here to see Benson again? He held up the bear like a badge of honor. I'd love to. Elena moved to the kitchen, busying herself with juice and a sippy cup. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked. Leo, she said gently, show Mrs. Vance your drawings while I make some tea. He pulled a stack from the table and started spreading them out on the carpet. Then he coughed, a tight, raspy sound. Elena was at his side in seconds. You need your inhaler. He nodded. She opened a drawer and retrieved it, helping him take 2 puffs. Slow breaths, baby, she whispered. She rubbed his back, counting under her breath as he exhaled. I watched the way her fingers moved, precise, practiced, like a woman who had done this 100 times before. When his breathing calmed, she kissed his head. Go get your favorite book, she told him. He shuffled off down the hall. I'm sorry, she said to me. His asthma flares when he's excited. Does he need to see a doctor? She hesitated. We did last month. The specialist wants to switch meds, but... Her voice trailed off. The deductible's high. I looked around. The faded linoleum. The peeling paint. The pile of mail. It was all screaming one thing. This woman wasn't scamming anyone. She was drowning. Leo came back, book in hand, breath steadier. He crawled onto the couch beside me, tucking Benson under his chin. Would you like me to read? He nodded, pressing close like I'd always belonged there. As I read, Elena disappeared into the kitchen. I heard a drawer open, the rattle of pills, the sound of her drinking something down. After the story, Leo wandered back to his toys, and Elena returned to the sofa. I saw another envelope now, half opened, from the electric company. More threats. I spoke gently. Elena, I want to understand what happened between you and Arthur. Her eyes flicked to Leo, checking that he was out of earshot. We met at a charity event, she said slowly. I was working as a server. He kept coming back to my table, asking questions about my classes. A faint smile tugged at her lips. He wasn't what I expected. And you fell in love. She nodded. He wanted to tell your family. But there was always some company crisis, something with Julian, or timing that didn't feel right. Then I got pregnant. Her voice cracked. He was thrilled. Said it was time to introduce me properly. That he had a plan, but he died before he could. She nodded again. I took a breath. Why didn't you come to me afterward? Her gaze dropped to the floor. I tried, she whispered. I went to the funeral home. But when I saw the suits, the cameras, the board members, I turned around. You were scared. I was nobody, she said. But that's not all of it, is it? She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Something heavier than grief. I didn't push. Not yet. Why now? I asked. She looked around at the apartment. At everything, she said, and nothing. Leo asks about his father all the time. I wanted him to have something real. Leo coughed again, that same sharp rasp. She turned sharply toward him, muscles tensing like a spring. This building's air quality is awful, she muttered. I didn't need to be told that. I could see it, smell it, breathe it in. Elena, I said, my voice firm now. I have a guest house on my property. 2 bedrooms, private kitchen, clean air, and a yard for Leo. Her back stiffened. Mrs. Vance, I'm not looking for a handout. It's not a handout. It's a place for my grandson to breathe. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's family. I leaned forward. I don't know the whole story, but I know that boy is Arthur's. He has his laugh. He carries Benson. Leo came running over. Mama, Benson is hungry. We'll feed him in a minute. Sweetheart, Elena said, distracted. Leo looked up at me suddenly. Will there be grass? Grass, for Benson to roll in. Elena opened her mouth to scold him, but I cut in. There's a big yard with trees, and yes, lots of grass. His face lit up. Can we go, Mama? Please. She looked at him, then at the pile of envelopes, then at the inhaler still on the table. Her eyes closed, just for a second. I don't know what happened after Arthur died, I said softly, but I know fear when I see it. And whatever you're afraid of, you and Leo will be safe in my home. She didn't speak, but she nodded. For Leo, she said. That was all. The move happened fast. Everything they owned fit in the trunk of my car and 2 canvas totes in the back seat. Leo chattered the entire ride, pointing out trees, street signs, dogs, anything and everything. Elena sat quietly beside him, hands clenched so tightly in her lap her knuckles had turned white. When the gates to my estate swung open, she drew in a breath like she'd been holding it for miles. The main house came into view first, stone and slate, stately but solemn. I had Thomas continue down the winding drive until we reached the guest cottage. Tucked beneath the oaks, it had been untouched for 15 years. Since my mother-in-law passed, I'd had it cleaned, stocked, and made livable the moment I'd made up my mind. This is where you'll stay, I told her. Leo pressed his nose to the window. His voice was a whisper. It's a castle. Elena stepped out slowly, taking in the porch, the garden, the sheer quiet of it all. Inside, she moved from room to room like someone tiptoeing through a dream. The fridge was full. The second bedroom had bright sheets and a bookshelf lined with picture books. There was even a small drafting table beneath the window. I'd remembered what Frank said about her unfinished degree. Elena paused there. She touched the edge of the desk like it might disappear. Her hand went to her mouth. Her shoulders trembled. This is too much, she whispered. From down the hall, Leo shouted, Mama, look, a desk for you. With real pencils, I said quietly. Arthur would have wanted you to have that space. She turned, eyes wet. He would have loved this place. Yes, I said. He would have. I left them to settle in, promising I'd stop by in the morning. As I walked back to the main house, something in me eased. Not completely. Not yet. But the weight I'd carried for 4 years felt lighter. Julian was waiting in the foyer. He didn't like surprises. Mother, he said sharply, trying to sound casual, I've been calling you. I was out. Out where? He followed me into the living room. His voice was measured, careful. I've been thinking about the Elena situation, about your safety. These kinds of people, they can become unpredictable. I'm fine, I said, removing my coat. I'm not worried. Actually, I added, turning to face him, Elena and Leo moved into the guest house today. He went very still. What? They moved in. The boy needs clean air. She needs a safe place to stay. Leo is Arthur's son. I'm sure of it. His face stayed still, but his voice had a new edge. You invited strangers onto the property without verifying anything. Leo is family, I said. This is reckless. What about security protocols? Our reputation? My decision is final. He paused. Tried to smooth the anger from his expression. Of course, it's your home. I just hope you're not being taken advantage of. That night, I looked out from my bedroom window. The guest house lights glowed like lanterns in the trees. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Over the next 2 weeks, Leo blossomed. His asthma eased with the new medication and better air. He started sleeping through the night. He even laughed in his sleep. Elena took longer. She was careful, polite. But her eyes constantly tracked Leo, like she was waiting for something to go wrong. I didn't push. Trust would come in time. On a Saturday afternoon, Julian surprised us. He showed up just as we were finishing lunch on the patio. I thought I'd stop by and check on our guests, he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Leo shouted, Uncle Julian. Julian stiffened but managed a wave. Hey, sport. Hot today. How? That a pool I saw back there. Leo's eyes lit up. Mama, pool. Please, can we swim? Elena looked uncertain. I don't think. Nonsense, I said. It's heated. I'll get towels. As Elena took Leo to change, Julian wandered the pool deck, admiring the landscaping. You've really rolled out the welcome mat, haven't you? They're family, I said. His smile flattened. Family. Elena's phone buzzed just as Leo reappeared in swim trunks. She glanced down. My old firm, she said. I should take this. Julian offered. Go ahead. I'll keep an eye on the little man. She hesitated. The gate, she said. It stays locked. Leo doesn't swim well. Julian waved her off. I've got it. I was adjusting the umbrella when I heard the splash. I turned. Leo was in the deep end, arms thrashing. I screamed for Elena and ran toward the pool. Julian jumped in, fully clothed, and pulled Leo out, coughing and sputtering. Elena arrived seconds later, grabbing her son, pressing him to her chest. The gate, she gasped. It was locked. I locked it. I must have missed it, Julian said, brushing water from his sleeves. These old latches. That night, as the house settled into quiet, I stood by the window. Julian's car pulled away. His phone was pressed to his ear. And in my stomach, something icy and coiled tightened. Suspicion. The next morning, Thomas knocked gently on my study door. Mrs. Vance, there are 2 women here from Child Protective Services. I stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. CPS, yes, ma'am. They're asking to speak with you. It's about Leo Garcia. Show them in. Two women entered, polite but firm. Mrs. Vance, I'm Susan Myers. This is Denise Wilson. We received an anonymous report. A claim of child endangerment. And near drowning yesterday. Possible negligence, also. Concern about the child's living conditions. I kept my voice steady. There was an incident at the pool, but Leo is fine. His mother was not negligent. We'll need to interview Ms. Garcia and the child and see where they're living. Of course, I said, standing. Follow me. As we walked across the lawn, my thoughts raced. An anonymous report, filed within hours of the incident. Too convenient, too fast. This wasn't random. This was planted. Elena looked pale when we arrived. She clutched Leo tightly. These women are with child services, I said gently. They have some questions. Terror flashed in her eyes, but she nodded. The women inspected every room, checked the kitchen, opened drawers. Leo's room was clean and safe. Toys, books, a nightlight shaped like a moon. When they questioned Elena about the pool, her voice shook but her answers were clear. I was on the phone with my old employer. Julian was watching him. I repeated the same story. I paused, then asked, out of curiosity, when was the report filed? Ms. Myers checked her tablet. 6:15 yesterday evening. Just a few hours after the pool incident. I escorted them to their car. The living conditions are adequate, Ms. Myers said, and the child seems well cared for. We'll file our report. I nodded once. For what it's worth, this report feels malicious, I said. Elena Garcia is an excellent mother. She has my full support. Back inside the guest house, Elena sat rigid on the sofa. Her hands gripped each other until her knuckles were white. They're going to take him, she whispered. No, I said. They're not. You don't know, she said. This always happens, right when I start to feel safe. I sat beside her. Elena, don't you find the timing strange? She looked up, startled. In business, when things line up too perfectly, someone's pulling strings. This wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. She swallowed. Who would do that? That's what I intend to find out. Who benefits from making you look unfit? Who wants you and Leo gone? Her eyes darted away. That same fear I'd seen at the cemetery flickered again. I defended you today, I said. I will continue to, but I need the truth. She stared at me for a long moment, then stood. I need to check on Leo. That night, after he fell asleep, she asked me to sit with her on the porch. The air was still, warm. Crickets hummed across the yard. She didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, I haven't told you everything, she said, about Arthur. The next morning, I made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Arthur's college roommate, Marcus Leland. Now a forensic consultant in Chicago. He picked up on the second ring. Amelia. His voice was startled. It's been ages. I need your help, I said. It's about Arthur. There was a beat of silence. Then gently, tell me what's going on. I laid it out as simply as I could, the mysterious timing, the sealed medical records, Elena's story, the NDA and hush money. By the time I finished, Marcus didn't sound surprised. He never told me he had a child, he said quietly. But I'm not shocked. He'd been off the last few months before he passed. Said he was working on something big. Did he ever mention problems with Julian? Marcus laughed bitterly, always. They were never close. But toward the end, Arthur said Julian was tightening the leash. Surprised he didn't say something to you. I felt the guilt tighten around my chest. I thought I knew everything. Marcus sighed. I'll pull what I can. Death certificate, coroner notes, insurance filings, anything that doesn't match up. Just give me a few days. I thanked him and hung up, then immediately called Frank. If there's a paper trail, I told him, I want it. Anything linking Julian to Arthur's estate decisions, medical contacts, or financial blocks. No leaks, no assumptions. Frank understood. This is personal, I said. It's family. Later that afternoon, I invited Julian to the main house for tea. He arrived with the same polished charm, but I saw the calculation behind his eyes. He didn't sit until I did. I've been thinking about Leo, I began calmly. And Elena. Julian poured himself a cup. Well, I hope you've been thinking clearly. I smiled faintly. They're staying. His grip tightened slightly around the china, and I'm considering adding Leo to the family trust. He froze. That's premature, is it? Arthur was never confirmed as the father. There's no documentation. I've asked for a DNA test, I lied. He blinked. You did. I want to be certain, I said, letting the silence stretch. I think Arthur would have wanted that. He set his teacup down with just a little too much force. You're letting emotion cloud your judgment. I'm using my judgment, I corrected him, as the matriarch of this family. And as Arthur's mother, he stood, smoothing his jacket. If this is about guilt, I understand. But don't dismantle what we've built over sentiment. I leaned back, watching him. You seem very nervous, Julian. His jaw tightened. I'm concerned. For you. For the company. I'll let you get back to your day. He left without looking back. That night, Frank called. I found something odd, he said. There was a change to Arthur's medical records 2 weeks before he died. Suddenly, there's a note about a congenital heart condition. But there's no diagnosis history, no doctor's signature. Just ... added. From where? A private practice in Denver. Doesn't match his known providers. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's not all, Frank continued. I also found a wire transfer from Vance Holdings to that clinic, dated 3 days before the note appeared. How much? $75,000. Authorized by Julian. My hand clenched around the phone. Keep digging, I said, quietly, and Frank. Yes, if this ends up being what I think it is, we're not going to the board. We're going to the press. The next morning, Marcus sent me a file. A copy of Arthur's original life insurance application, no mention of any heart condition, and a list of his annual physicals, all clean. No history of arrhythmia, no flagged cardiac issues, but most damning a photo. Arthur, standing in his apartment kitchen, holding a sonogram, the date stamp, 2 weeks before his death. He had known. He was planning to be a father. He wasn't going anywhere. I printed the image and tucked it into my bag. By the end of that day, I had what I needed: proof of forged medical records, an illegal wire transfer, a motive, controlling the company, silencing Arthur, erasing a liability, and the willingness to use a child's safety as leverage. Julian had underestimated me. He thought grief had made me soft. He forgot who raised Arthur, and who built this empire before he ever stepped into a boardroom. That night, I asked Elena to come to the study after Leo went to bed. She looked nervous, still carrying that weight she never set down. I handed her the file. "Read it," I said. She did, page by page. Her hand went to her mouth. She looked at the sonogram last and wept. When she finished, she looked up at me. "What now?" I smiled for the first time in days. "Now we bring it all into the light. We chose Sunday, a family brunch, the kind Julian insisted on maintaining after Arthur passed, though it had become more about public appearances than togetherness. He arrived on time, as always, wearing a crisp white shirt and that same curated smile. Elena and Leo were already seated at the far end of the long table under the veranda. I watched Julian's eyes flick toward them, calculating. He nodded politely. "Nice of you to join us." "Leo's been asking for waffles all morning," I said lightly. "He insisted we not be late." Julian sat, unfolding his napkin with care. Sweet kid. He didn't mean it. The staff moved silently around us, pouring orange juice, setting out silver platters. I waited until the plates were full, and Leo was happily focused on buttering his pancake. Then I reached into my handbag and set the folder on the table between Julian and me. He didn't look at it right away. "Elena told me everything," I said softly. Julian sipped his coffee. "I'm sure her version was compelling. She had proof," I said. "And so do I." That got his attention. He glanced down at the folder, then back at me. His voice was quiet. "Careful, Mother. Accusations like that are only dangerous," I interrupted, "when they're true." Elena reached over and took Leo's hand, gently guiding him inside. The moment they were out of earshot, Julian dropped the mask. "I did what I had to do to protect the company, the legacy. You buried your brother." "He was leaving us in chaos," Julian hissed. "He wanted to walk away from the business, from the board, from you. He wasn't abandoning us," I snapped. "He was starting something new, with a family, with a child." "He didn't die by accident, did he?" Julian leaned back in his chair, silent. "You think this house, this name, this company was built on pristine values," he said. "You taught us to win. I taught you to lead," I said coldly. "Not to destroy your own blood." He stood slowly. "You won't go to the board. They'd tear the company apart. The shares would tank. They'd lose faith." "I don't need the board," I said. "I have the press. And the public loves a fallen prince more than a polished heir." Julian's jaw twitched. "You'd burn everything. To protect a waitress and her bastard child. I stood too. No, to protect my grandson and to honor my son. Arthur wasn't weak. He was brave. You tried to erase him. But all you've done is hand me the match." He looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing across from him. Then he turned and walked out. No threats, no parting words. He knew it was over. By Monday morning, my lawyers had filed a motion to freeze Julian's executive authority. Frank compiled the evidence into a formal report, complete with affidavits and account audits. I released the story to a journalist Arthur once mentored, someone who still believed in telling the truth. By Wednesday, the headline hit every financial feed. Asterisk, asterisk, Vance heiress hidden. Heir apparent accused. Shocking allegations rock elite legacy. Asterisk, asterisk. I didn't do interviews. I didn't need to. The documents spoke for themselves. Julian tried damage control, of course. Press statements, counter lawsuits. But nothing stuck. Too much truth. Too many receipts. Within a week, he was suspended pending investigation. By month's end, he'd resigned. No press conference, no farewell, just silence. And suddenly, there was peace, real peace, not the polished illusion we used to dress our grief in. Arthur's name was restored, his obituary rewritten, not as a son lost too soon, but as a father whose legacy lived on. We held a small ceremony in the garden. Helena, Leo, a few of Arthur's old friends. Marcus flew in and brought a framed photo of Arthur holding that sonogram. I placed it beside the stone. Leo wore a little navy blazer and held Benson tight. When it was over, he slipped his hand into mine. Grandma, yes, sweetheart. Do you think Papa knows we're okay now? I bent down and kissed his forehead. I think he knew all along. That night, I walked the length of the garden alone. The air was soft, filled with the scent of blooming jasmine. In the distance, the guest house windows glowed warm. Inside, I could hear faint music, laughter. A boy's voice reading out loud. I stopped by Arthur's stone one last time, ran my fingers along the engraving. And for the first time in 4 years, I didn't cry, I smiled.